May the words of my mouth and the meditation of all our hearts be always acceptable in your sight, O Lord, our strength and our Redeemer. Amen. Ich dien. These two German words appear on certain £1 and 2p coins. They can be found on the sign of the Prince of Wales pub. They are stitched into the badge of every Welsh rugby shirt. Ich dien, I serve. These are the words to which the young Princess Elizabeth referred back in 1947, when she said, "There is a motto which has been borne by many of my ancestors, a noble motto, I serve." Those words were an inspiration, she said, to many bygone heirs to the throne when they made their knightly dedication as they came to manhood. She said, "I should like to make that dedication now. It's very simple. I declare before you all that my whole life, whether it be long or short, shall be devoted to your service and the service of our great imperial family to which we all belong. Ich dien, I serve." She was 21. Of course, as a child, there were no thoughts of her becoming queen. Elizabeth's uncle David, whom we know as Edward VIII, was king. But on the night of the 11th of December 1936, her uncle David, King Edward, gave that now famous broadcast in which he declared that he found it impossible to carry the heavy burden of responsibility and to discharge his duties as king as he would wish to without the help and support of the woman he loved. King Edward's abdication meant that Edward's brother, the Duke of York, Elizabeth's father, succeeded to the throne, and Elizabeth, at just 10 years old, became heir presumptive. I cannot begin to imagine how a 10-year-old child comes to terms with such a monumental shift in the direction of one's life, nor how a 21-year-old woman, with all her adult life ahead of her, can declare that the whole of her life, whether it be long or short, shall be devoted to our service. This impressive, courageous, sacrificial act, this generous, gracious, unreserved gift of herself given in service to God and to us, is why we gather here today to celebrate and to give thanks. Queen Elizabeth II may indeed reign over us, but first and foremost, she serves. Ich dien, I serve. Now, Elizabeth's uncle was 41 when he became king. Her father was 40 when he took to the throne. Surely one must have thought that there would be plenty of time for the young Princess Elizabeth to prepare herself for all that would lie ahead when she became queen. But the Second World War had taken its toll on the health of George VI. He was also a heavy smoker and had been treated for lung cancer. As his health deteriorated, the young Elizabeth took on more and more royal duties. On the 31st of January 1952, ignoring the doctor's advice, King George went to the airport to see his daughter Elizabeth head off with Philip on their tour to Australia via Kenya. It was to be the King's last public appearance. 6 days later, the King died in bed in Sandringham, and the young Elizabeth flew back from Kenya as Queen Elizabeth II. She was just 25 years old. The Archbishop of Canterbury, George Fisher, wrote a little book of private devotions, which he gave to the Queen to use as she prepared for her coronation. The first such devotion was a quote from Psalm 25. "Show me thy ways, O Lord. Teach me thy paths. Lead me in thy truth and teach me. For thou art the God of my salvation. On thee do I wait all the day." Archbishop Fisher added these words for the Queen to reflect on. "The whole of life is a journey to God. In its course are many lesser journeys taken for many different purposes. Sometimes the Bible records special journeys undertaken for special purposes in answer to a call from God. Such will be my journey to Westminster. It will be undertaken in obedience to a call from God. I have not chosen this office for myself. He has appointed me to it, and I go to be consecrated to it by him. My prayer must echo that of the Virgin Mary and that of the Lord himself. Be it unto me according to thy will, not what I will, but what thou wilt. And because he leads, I may follow in complete trust. Not what I will, but what thou wilt." Words of sacrifice and surrender, words of service. Ich dien, I serve. Now, I don't know about you, but I can't quite imagine what it must be like to be Queen. Early on in Elizabeth's reign, the former shipping correspondent of the Glasgow Herald, Dorothy Laird, discovered that there wasn't a basic reference book on the life of the Queen. Much to her surprise, she was given permission by the palace to write a biography. With access to courtiers and staff, she interviewed 300 people, and in 1959, her book, How the Queen Reigns, was published. In the book, she says, "The Queen has a longer lineage than we have. She has greater means than we have. She has more resources and more opportunities. But she has precisely the same number of hours in a day and days in a year as we have. All the alternatives to duty are there. Husband, children, lovely places to live in, horses to ride, hills to climb. And what does the Queen do? She spends hours each day reading worryingly dull, difficult papers about the unsolved and, it must often seem, insoluble problems of the world. She spends more hours talking gravely about these same problems to men at least a generation her senior. When she puts on her lovely hat and goes out in her fine Rolls-Royce, it is more often than not to sit on a drafty platform, listening with serene courtesy to well-meant but lengthy platitudes. When she travels, she has to pass by the coral beaches for the local hospital, the glorious loneliness of veld or forest for an overcrowded reception. Why? Because the Queen is filled with a sense of duty so deep that it is a feeling of vocation. Because for her, the Commonwealth is her life. She knows that if she works incessantly, cheerfully, resolutely, and entirely without taking offence, she will do incalculable good. A sense of duty so deep that it is a feeling of vocation. Ich dien, I serve. In 2010, UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon summed up what that life of devotion and service looked like, and in his address to the Queen said, "In a changing and churning world, you are an anchor for our age. Your reign spans the decades, from the challenges of the Cold War to the threat of global warming, from the Beatles to Beckham, from television to Twitter. Through the years, you have travelled the world and met its people. You have," he said, "become a living symbol of grace, constancy, and dignity." What a beautiful description of what it is that we celebrate today. A living symbol of grace, constancy, and dignity. Ich dien, I serve. And a former archbishop once said, my meetings with the Queen brought home to me the sacramental manner in which she views her own office, that God had called her from birth to fulfill her responsibilities as sovereign was very evidently clear in her conviction. And it was founded on a firm Christian faith, which also took the form of duty, not in a sense of burden, but of glad service. Ich dien. I serve. St. Paul says in his letter to the Romans, I appeal to you therefore, brothers and sisters, on the basis of God's mercy, to present your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable to God, which is your reasonable act of worship. This sense of self-sacrifice and surrender is at the heart of the Queen's long and faithful reign. Back in 1947, aged just 21, having just resolved to devote the whole of her life to our service, the Queen said this: I shall not have strength to carry out this resolution alone, unless you join in it with me, as I now invite you to do. She said, I know that your support will be unfailingly given. God help me to make good my vow, and God bless all of you who are willing to share in it. She said, if we all go forward together with an unwavering faith, a high courage, and a quiet heart, we shall be able to make of this ancient commonwealth, which we all love so dearly, an even grander thing, more free, more prosperous, more happy, and a more powerful influence for good in the world than it has been in the greatest days of our forefathers. And then she added these words, echoing those of St. Paul. To accomplish that, we must give nothing less than the whole of ourselves. We must give nothing less than the whole of ourselves. So on this great and glorious day, may we be so bold, so inspired, so moved to stand and say together with our great and noble Queen, Ich dien, I serve. I serve. Amen.